So, Kyle, I'll just have you introduce yourself and explain who you are, where you're at right now, like what you're doing for a job, and then we'll go from there.
My name is Kyle Lee McWagner. I currently live in Huntsville, Texas. I'm an assistant professor in the political science department at Sam Houston State University, which is a mid-sized regional college in Southeast Texas, about an hour north of Houston.
Do you know how many students there are at your school?
A lot. Um,
I don't know. I don't even know BYU Idaho how many students we have. So, as I remember, Kyle, like thinking back to your time as a student at BYU Idaho, when is it you decided you wanted to be a professor of political science, and when is it you thought, hey, maybe this is possible?
to answer your previous question, it's just over 120,000. Sorry, no, 20. Word numbers are hard. 2130s. 21,000. That's the word.
21,000. Okay, so that's the size of BYU Idaho, a little bit bigger.
It's similar, and it kind of serves a similar purpose.
Yeah,
Like there are more prestigious schools, but it's a
yeah,
good school, and it's got a decent student population, and there's enough stuff. Anyways,
yeah. That's cool.
when did I? Um, so I came in as a history major, and I just kind of think I was like, do I want to be a history teacher because I like those classes in high school? Or maybe I want to be a lawyer, like I did uh, forensics, speech and debate in high school, and I was dabbling with that in college also. Um, and I just decided to do a minor in political science because I don't know, they go together, I guess. But I took Brother Carter's Intro to Comparative Politics course, and he asked a question. It had to be early in the thing. He's like, if a country wants to increase its GDP, should it raise taxes on imports or should it allow in more immigrants? And I think I said raise taxes on imports because I was just like, more money comes in, makes GDP go up. Seems reasonable. And I guess I could argue for that. So I did that. And then he did this amazing thing where he like pulled out data. And I was like, here we can actually answer this question. We can look at all these countries, different countries across time, and we can look at what happens when they raise their tariffs. We can see what happens when they raise or lower their immigration barriers. And we can look at what happens to their GDP in both the short term and the long term from that policy change. And the answer is very clear. If you want your GDP to go up, you should let in immigrants, like lots of them. Short term is kind of a muddled effect, but within 5 years, huge effects. And I said, you mean it's not just all arguments? Like there are real answers? Like you don't just have to like make arguments. You can go out, find data, find the answer to your question and know the answer and like have the right answer objectively. And anyone who wants to disagree with you isn't disagreeing with you because they're right. They're disagreeing with you because they refuse to acknowledge the evidence. And that was really appealing to me. That was probably the first spark of like not being a professor, but the idea that there are actual answers to questions. Um, and then the next step in that journey, and that also is when I instantly switched my major to political science. I was like, I don't want to wait till like some scroll is discovered in a church in France for me to be able to answer a question. I just want like I have a question, let's collect the data and let's do it. And so that was my switch there. And then it was actually in your class, which I think was just like the research methods course. And
Hmm.
you were new. I think it was the first semester you taught there. And you're just like, a PhD is easy. Everyone should get a PhD. And that was like the first time like that particular thought got put in my brain. Um,
Was I right about that, by the way, Kyle? Is a PhD easy?
you were so wrong about that. You couldn't have been more wrong about anything. I don't know why you went around saying that. Do you still say that? Or have you
No, I
repented?
don't say it anymore.
Anyways, but the first plant that got put in my head. And then it just more and more and more got cemented, especially as I went to the math department and started taking more stats classes. Like, um, here's the toolkits you need to do that thing that I saw Brother Carter do. Collect the data and then really sink your teeth into it, know what's happening in the math under the hood, and being able to precisely tune your model so that it's the exact right type so that your argument is as sound as possible. Um, that was really appealing to me. And then by this time I was thinking as like, well, maybe become a professor, but also I was still thinking like diplomat, State Department stuff. My emphasis was in foreign government, and I had just done an amazing internship in Brussels at the EU. I was in the international ward there where I met those people, and they're all incredible people. Um, I had another experience where I was in Kiev, and we were also in the international ward. And once again, there was a lot of people that were in that bucket. And once again, they're all like the people that work for the State Department and for the diplomatic wing of the military are the most amazing, most brilliant, most talented people I've ever met. I was like, maybe I could be one of those people. It turned out that would have been a terrible career choice, um, because everyone came in and got fired just a year after I graduated. Um, and they haven't really been hiring since. But it was in man, Dwayne, what's his last name?
Adamson.
Dwayne Adamson's. So it was in his capstone course where we were supposed to actually do a research project. And I had this theory that I thought was good. Maybe it was good, I don't know. But I was planning on doing a little just like I'd done things for other classes where like I did random samples of like student housing on campus, or I'd even done like a random cell phone uh, poll of the people in Rexburg using a phone book, because that was really exciting and fun. And so like I imagined doing something like that, but having like a sample size of, I don't know, 50 to 100 people and doing something like that. But I went to your office and I was explaining this to you, and you said, I have all these leftover emails from a project that I'm not using. And you make the survey. Here, I'll give you the emails. Here's how you do it on Qualtrics, where it'll auto send the survey to the people on your email list. So I said, whoa, I did that. And then the data started coming in, and I was hooked because I had a question, which I thought was a good question, and which I asked the smartest people I knew, and they said, I don't know the answer to that question. And uh, I had the data and I had the toolkit and I knew the answer. No one else in the world knew the answer. You couldn't Google the answer. You couldn't find it on Wikipedia. I had it. I knew the answer. And that was the censure. It's like, I would like to do this professionally for the rest of my life. Whether I'm answering my own questions or someone else's questions, I want to be a person who answers questions, and not just debates them or argues them or presents them. I want to find answers that anyone who can just look at reality as objective and we can agree on some fundamental assumptions about how things work that are basic and easy and aren't big leaps. We can look at it and be like, that's the answer to this question. And so the thing to do if you want to answer questions is to get a PhD.
It's interesting because, like, every academic I talk to about why they love what they do, that's what they say. They say, because a lot about it is not fun. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of just hassle. But the best thing is, like, once you find the answer to the question, you're the only person in the world that knows the answer to that question. And there's an excitement that comes in knowing something that nobody else knows. It's a little bit addictive. It's a little bit like you just want to chase that. And
Yeah.
then sometimes you find something and you're just like, I can't publish it. And so you forget about it. And then you come back to it again. And you're like, wait a minute, I forgot. I know that, and nobody else knows that. And I haven't published it, so maybe they never will know that, but at least I know that.
Yeah. So that's how I got on the path to pursue graduate school.
Were you ever scared that you wouldn't make it or that it wouldn't be a feasible career? Like, probably people said to you things like, "That's a bad idea."
They did. They were right. Uh, it was a hard path. There's a couple points in which, I was most uncertain that it was the right choice. So, number 1 was when I was applying to grad school. That's a vicious process, and it's expensive, and it came at a really inconvenient time in my life. I had just graduated, um, and then within a month, I was a father for the first time, and my wife had to go back to school to finish her degree, and she was doing student teaching, which is your first time teaching something is terrible. Um, and so she was very absorbed in that. And so I was studying for whatever dumb test it was that you have to study for, the GSAT or whatever it is, graduate admittance something. Um, and I didn't do great on parts of that test. I did really well on some parts and I okay on other parts and bad on other parts. And but I applied and it was expensive to apply. I applied to like 8 schools, cost me hundreds of dollars to do that. And um almost all of them rejected me pretty soundly and quickly. That was very disheartening. Um, I got 2 offers to master's programs. So I was on their wait list, and they're like, "We can admit you as a master's. You will not have any funding. You'll have a 25% scholarship, and as you're going through these courses, there might be opportunities for you to switch into the PhD program." But I, you know, had a wife and a baby. And I said, "I can't take non-funded options. It's just not an option." Um, and so we kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and I had nightmares. But finally, I had one school that gave me a funded offer, and I with all my options in front of me, I took the funded one,
Yeah.
and it was from a decent school. It's not a great school, but it's a decent school. They actually place people. And they're gonna pay me for 6 years to learn how to answer people's questions. And so I took it. And I'll say, to BYU's credit, uh, I later talked to the person who was on the committee, on the graduate admittance committee, and they said it was the letter from Brother Saunders in the math department
Nice.
that is the reason I got in. My math score was poor. That was the one I did the worst on. And, I was specifically applying to do their more mathy things.
Yeah.
I've never tested great. I didn't get the accommodations that I should have. So like I have learning disabilities and I didn't apply for the things and I should have. I didn't. And when I was studying for the test, I had a screaming baby on my lap the whole time. It didn't pan out great. But I had this professor who I'd taken 3 classes from, including classes on Bayesian statistics and other advanced classes and courses. And they said, which is a better judge of his ability? This professor who clearly has spent extensive hours with him in these very advanced classes, or this test? And she argued for the teacher. And
Awesome.
so that's how I got accepted through a strong relationship I forged with the faculty at BYU Idaho, or else I wouldn't have got in.
And a lot of people don't know this when you say funded. So what that means is you didn't pay any tuition for your PhD and they paid you to go to school there.
Yeah. So
That's
I
pretty great.
Yeah. So I started getting paid $28,000 a year, and by the end, I was being paid 35 to go to
So
school, and I worked about 15 hours a week helping faculty in various ways, usually, teaching small group study sessions, essentially.
So switching gears a little bit, Kyle, there were a lot of things you did as a student to prepare yourself for that. What would you suggest to students that want to pursue that path? Because I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a great story. I don't know how proud you are of it, but I'm super proud of it that you were able to get into a PhD. Oftentimes, a PhD program, you need faculty who have relationships there. We didn't have any of that at the time. There's a lot of advantages that you didn't have. And like you said, you struggled on the GRE but there were things that you did to make it so that you would be successful in that situation despite some of those disadvantages. Like what are some of the things you would tell students to do?
The most important parts of my BYU Idaho experience for pursuing this career path happened outside the classroom, like without fail. So, my relationships, close relationships with faculty, mainly you and Brother Saunders, just hours and hours of one-on-one mentorship. Um, that was invaluable just for my learning and growth. Um, I was blessed to be on the edit to be the chief editor for I don't remember the name of the journal that was on
Yeah,
campus
and
at the
doesn't
time.
even exist anymore. But yeah, there was a
That's a
journal.
that's a tragedy.
I know.
Um, I don't think I learned to write reading dozens of other students' papers that they were very proud of, and saying, "This is what's good about this paper, and this is what's bad about this paper," and then working with so we'd pick the top 8 or whatever, and then working with those students to make them better. That taught me how to write more than any English class I ever took. Um, and doubtless that helped me with my writing sample when I was applying, and it helped me more than anything when it came time, like, post courses when I was working on my dissertation, because it's just writing, 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 writing. And luckily, I had, you know, not professional, but, like, pseudo professional experience being a editor of a journal, and that was invaluable. Um, and then the last thing was, the Jefferson Public Policy Society, which I don't know if that's still there active. Wow, what a loss. Um, I did so much with them. Um, I did
Do you
so
remember
much.
we did that? Do you remember we did the study about a bus service in Rexburg?
I do.
Like like a month ago, the city of Rexburg asked for that data because nobody has ever done a study on a bus service and they're considering doing it again.
So as part of that, we did the phone interviews. That's what I was referring to earlier. Is I think you were advisor. It was pretty loose advisorship, as I remember it.
Yeah.
Um, um, but the opportunity to work with city council, to have like that's such a unique opportunity, and it wouldn't have happened anywhere else. Where the city council is like, we're thinking of applying for this grant to help fund this thing. Um, I don't know how that happened, but a group of students got to be able to do the work of like professional consultants, and we looked at local towns, small towns that were commiserate to that's not the right word, but
Comparable. Yeah.
comparable, thanks, comparable to Rexburg in Wyoming, Idaho, and Utah, who had got the same grant before. We looked at their applications, how long it took, and all that stuff. And then we polled people in Rexburg. We asked them questions, and then we took those two strands of research and we brought them together and presented what the people of Rexburg thought and how long it would likely take and how likely it would be to succeed, da 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 da, all this stuff to the city council. Uh, that made it so that, like, more than you could learn in any class, like, that process made it so that when I got to grad school, like, I knew what research looked like on the ground. And I knew what it was like to take research and to make it presentable and digestible to people. that this is not their field. Also, I got a lot of experience in being yelled at and called a socialist
From the
in
city.
from
Yeah,
members, not members of this council. They asked for us to do this, but
yeah,
from
the
community,
public.
the public comment section, that was that was something else. But like, it also just gave me a much deeper insight into how politics actually works. Once again, than any classroom ever did. Not to, shame Brother Smith's state and local government class. It was a great class. But going monthly to city council and seeing the debates, working with the counselors, presenting them information, having them have follow-up questions, and then we going and finding those things, and then just being there, even when we're not doing our thing, there were other things that were happening. Um, that taught me more about how politics works than any course ever did.
Yeah.
And that was invaluable.
And I think what I would say is like some of those societies and things have gone away. But I've noticed in my time at BYU Idaho, there's like this ebb and flow. It's basically based on who the students are who are here at the time and what they need. Because as you're describing this, I'm thinking of other students that had different kinds of things, but were critical for them building the career that they ended up having. And I think what it takes from the student side is a willingness to like go beyond the classroom. And once faculty, or I even think the Lord, once they see that there's this willingness and there's like some potential there, then opportunities present themselves. Like the opportunities you needed were the ones just for you to get you to where you needed to be. But it was because you were willing to put in the time outside of class. And I think that students need to do more of recognizing like there's advantages at BYU Idaho. Like when I was at University of Kansas, my advantage was there were a whole lot of faculty members that needed to publish and not a lot of graduate students for them to work with. And so I took advantage of those opportunities. Similar things at BYU Idaho. Like there's a lot of faculty willing to help with things and not a lot of students demanding those things. And so if you're a student that's willing to demand that, then you'll find that there are faculty that are willing to step in and help. Like Brother Saunders in the math department, he had no reason to take a special interest in you. It was you that made him take a special interest in you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably true. And I'll just say, so I've taught now at 4 different schools of all shades, like this one, a regional, mostly teaching college, 2 big R1 graduate endowed programs, a very fancy, religious private school, um, in LA, um, Loyola. And I look at all the students and I universally, they're all paying more and they're all getting less
Then
uh,
BYU Idaho.
than BYU, Idaho. I felt this most acutely at UC Irvine, where for some reason I was teaching students about psychology. I didn't know anything about psychology. And there's 400 kids in a class, and their professor just gets up there and says stuff for 45 minutes and then is like, peace, and they'll never see him again. And then they went to their small group study with me, who, I mean, I just read the same reading they had and said, wow, that's interesting stuff about synapses, myelin sheaths. I don't know what we're doing here. Um, and they are paying more than double what I paid. And they're just getting way worse of an education.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, Kyle, anything else you want to share with the students at BYU Idaho before we end?
take advantage of it. Look for opportunities outside of class. Um, look for opportunities to be part of and serve the community. And know that there are good jobs out there for people with degrees in political science and public administration. But there's a lot of people out there with those degrees. And so if you want those jobs, you have to show that not only do you have the degree, but you have the skill sets and some of the experience that will make you integrating into the workforce a lot easier. And I think those are replete at BYU Idaho if you look for them in ways that other places are quite poor.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. Appreciate you doing this.
No
Oh,
problem.
okay, I'm going to stop this.